AV Shop Talk, Episode 16.
Podcasting from Boston, Massachusetts and Los Angeles, California, this is AV Shop Talk, covering the latest audiovisual trends and emerging technologies. This is where the AV pros come to talk shop. With your hosts, Nate Schneider and Jason Griffin.
Hey there, Nate here with the AV Shop Talk podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to give this episode a listen, whether you're taking us along for your commute or you got us in your earbuds as you're going for a jog, or maybe you just have us on in the background at the office as you're getting stuff done. This is a podcast for integrators by integrators. You got Jason over there on the West Coast representing the residential side of systems integration, and me, I work in commercial. So between the two of us, we chat about a lot of things that systems integrators care about. Specifically in this episode, we're going to be talking about HDMI 2.0 and HDCP 2.2, and we are joined by Bill Schripsema of Atlona Technologies, and they make all kinds of extension products and even some switches and HD-based T switches and HDMI switches. So we will chat with him during the interview portion of this episode. But right now, I want to share with Jason a YouTube video I came across in the last month or so. It's called Life of an AV Installer. Maybe you're familiar with it.
I have come to install your TV. Where would you like for the TV to be mounted?
My wife wants the TV over the fireplace and does not want to see any wires.
Not a problem. I see that you do not have a power receptacle above the fireplace, and it will pose a problem with completely hiding all wires within the wall.
I paid a lot of money for you to hang this TV, and the sales associate said that you could hide all the wires in the wall.
I can give a how much money you paid. I'm the professional, and the sales associate is incapable of hooking up a toaster, much less a TV. Would you like to reschedule to have an electrician come out and install a receptacle above the fireplace before we hang this TV?
No. I want you to hang it with the power cable hanging down the wall plugged into a surge protector that will be suspended in the air.
That's going to be hot. I'm so proud of what I do. Now, what devices will you be hooking up to this television, and where will they be located in relation to your fireplace?
We were anticipating that you would hook up our brand new home theater in a box, VCR, laptop, and ColecoVision, and we want all the equipment upstairs under our sink in the master bathroom.
Crickets.
I shouldn't have talked over that part. He wants all the equipment upstairs under the master bedroom sink.
Precisely how much crack have you been smoking this morning? You have paid for a TV mounting which doesn't include a home theater in a box nor running wires upstairs. We can, however, do what you want, but it will cost significantly more.
How much are we talking about?
Considering you bought a bottom-line TV and surround sound system, I'm guessing you will have to take out a second mortgage.
I was hoping to get all this done today, because we have a party tonight and we waited until last night to go in and purchase this installation, and I don't care what it costs. I have people to impress.
Well, good sir. Congratulations. You have managed to impress me that you have made it this far in life without killing yourself and everyone around you.
Oh, that was harsh.
With that said, shall we begin?
Most certainly, and if you don't mind, I would like to watch and overwhelm you with endless trivial questions about irrelevant things that do not pertain to what we are doing today, while you make all this come together.
Okay, where's your TV and equipment we'll be hooking up?
Yeah. We were told that you will be bringing all of it with you today.
And the video ends. So what'd you think, Jason?
I think that video is it's fantastic. So perfect. Like, just spot on. I just, the first time you showed that to me, I just couldn't stop laughing. It's seriously right on the money. I know you were saying that I think that video has been around for a while, and There might be some people listening who have heard or seen it before, but this was a first for me, and that was a great find. It just made my day.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we could give somebody credit. I mean, it's called Life of an AV Installer. Spot on. Obviously, somebody who's an installer made it. It's posted on YouTube from Justin Miller, but I think he got it from somewhere else. But anyway, I don't know who to give credit for. But if you're listening to this, thank you. We salute you.
Yeah. If anybody listening happens to know where that originated from, certainly let us know. We'd love to cite the original creator of that great video.
Yeah, and if you find yourself in a similar situation as that poor AV installer, where you're being asked to relocate equipment up to an upstairs bedroom, you're going to need some extension products. And Atlona has just the thing for you to locate the equipment in the basement, in a closet, or I would not recommend the upstairs master bathroom sink, but it could be done with a product from Atlona, even though nobody would recommend putting any AV equipment anywhere remotely close to a sink. That's besides the point. Without any further ado, let's jump on into the interview with Bill from Atlona.
AV Shop Talk.
Hey, Bill. Welcome to AV Shop Talk. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
We're doing great. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We're looking forward to this conversation. We're going to jump in and talk about HDMI 2.0, HDCP 2.2, some of these rather pertinent topics, I guess, as we're moving forward into 4K UHD adoption. And it's becoming more and more important for integrators to really stay up to speed with this stuff. But before we jump into kind of the nuts and bolts here, why don't you give our listeners a little bit of a general personal introduction?
Okay, my name, like you said, is Bill Schripsema. I've been in the AV industry more than 40 years. If I look back at where I've made my living over the years, it's been one of those audio, video, a little bit of lighting, a little bit of stage management, but that's about as far as it goes. And the interesting thing is that I've been able to do it both as a technician, as a salesperson, and now as a product manager. And so all those skills have come in to really design and build products that I think help people design systems more efficiently.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important to have, people working at the manufacturers who have kind of been down in the trenches and understand really what the challenges are and sort of the roadblocks that we run into as integrators out there in the field. So I think that's great that you've got that background. Maybe tell our listeners a little about Atlona. I think most people listening are probably familiar with the company, but maybe you can give us a brief history.
Sure. Atlona's been in business for about 11 years now, soon our 12th year. We started as a distributor of audiovisual products and eventually started selling some OEM products, and about 5 years ago went down the path of designing products that were unique to Atlona. And at this point in time, virtually all of the products that we sell are only available from Atlona and are built to Atlona's design and specifications. And so we provide a unique choice for installers that we think is well suited to what a large percentage of the audience needs. We try not to cater to the most exotic installations, but to cater to the needs of the mainstream installer and the mainstream installation, and design products that have fabulous reliability and with great customer support. And it's paying off.
Well, that's great. I generally have had very good experiences with Atlona products. I've used quite a few of them, and I know that you guys have a lot of little, tools in your tool belt and little things that, aside from obviously your bread and butter parts like HDMI extenders and matrix switchers, you guys have, quite an array of products to suit a lot of different situations and installations, challenges that can come up. And I've generally had very, very good experiences with Atlona products. We thought you'd be a great guy to bring on. Let's jump in here to the main topic that we really want to touch on this evening, which is, kind of the evolution of HDMI and where all of this technology is going, and some of the, the pitfalls that integrators really need to watch out for as we move forward with this technology. And I think we'll start kind of right at the top with HDMI 2.0. This is, big news is coming out. We're hearing a lot about it, and maybe you can give us just a brief overview of what HDMI 2.0 is all about and why is it important.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. It's a very important step for HDMI. The HDMI group, of course, was originally founded by 5 display manufacturers and a company called Silicon Graphics here in the San Jose area. And the idea behind it was to provide an all-in-one cable. We've gone through several versions over the past 10 or so years. 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. Then there's a 1.4 A, B, and C. And last fall, the HDMI 2.0 was introduced. The big difference between HDMI 2.0 and the predecessors was that it, for the first time, enabled HDMI 4K at 60 hertz refresh rate with full color. Now, there's always a huge lag between the introduction of a standard and the time at which that standard becomes available to, first of all, the manufacturers to build product, and then once we start designing product around the new chipsets, that when that product becomes available to the consumer. So some very leading edge products have been introduced with 4K 60, but there's a lot of room that still needs to be explored in terms of more color depth, less or different color formats, and there's just a ton of things that hasn't even begun to be addressed in HDMI 2.0 with chipsets and all sorts of really cool things that will be available probably in 1, 2, 3, 4 years before we really fully exploit those opportunities.
Now, Bill, I'd like to jump in here. Now, Jason definitely represents more of the residential integration world, and I come from more of a commercial integration background. Before we get too far into HDMI 2.0, does Atlona position itself more towards one or the other? Like, do you try to cater your products more towards residential products or commercial products, or is it a combination of both?
Combination of both. We typically have slightly different products. We differentiate our residential from our commercial products in a couple different ways. The first one is the residential products probably have unbalanced audio. The commercial products have balanced audio outputs. Okay. Another difference is that the commercial guys need long distance on their input side. The residential guys usually have all their equipment in the rack, so HDMI inputs are really the order of the day, where HDBaseT inputs are typical of our commercial products. The resolution requirements are probably similar on both sides. Probably you also find some differences in terms of documentation, because a lot of the commercial guys work with consultants who require complete documentation, whereas that may not be quite so stringent on the residential side. So there's some key differences in the hardware. The guts of the hardware really are pretty much the same in terms of switch speed, resolutions, and of course reliability is important to both audiences.
Okay, gotcha. No, thanks for the clarification. I'm just trying to get the whole picture in my head here. So
sure, I'm responsible for Atlona's commercial products. There's another gentleman who is responsible for our residential products, although we sit next to each other and talk numerous times every day to make sure we're both on the same path.
Okay, cool, gotcha. So this is, as we talk about HDMI 2.0 and the increased bit depths and data rates and being able to support 4K 60, not just limited to 24 frames per second, another big part of the equation is this whole HDCP 2.2 idea, and I think from my interpretation, this could be a big potential gotcha for integrators and end users that are looking to buy a 4K display. Is that what do you agree with that statement there, or do you think are you concerned about HDCP 2.2 or is it
absolutely
is it okay, so that answers my question right there.
It's a huge issue, and it's something that is solved for free. the idea behind it, and let's go do a little bit of history here, just so we understand where we're coming from and why it's important. HDCP was designed to prevent people from illegally copying Hollywood content. As we know, the audio industry or the recording industry has been virtually killed by things like Napster and MP3 files that are shared routinely around friends and not so friends, and the record business is gone as we knew it when we were growing up. HDCP was designed to prevent that from happening to the video business and the film industry. And it had worked fairly well for about 5 years. And so, 2 or 3 years ago now, the basic HDCP 1.4 methodology was cracked so that it was no longer an effective deterrent to copying. And there are numerous devices on the market today that allow you to illegally copy protected content. So the industry said, wait a minute, we didn't need to protect NTSC or PAL content. We'll do basic content protection for high definition content, 1080p content. But before we start releasing 4K content to the market, we need a more secure protection scheme. And that's where HDCP 2.2 came about.
Okay.
And so far, to the best of anybody's knowledge, it has not been cracked.
So let me make sure my understanding is correct. So you can correct me if I'm wrong here. Hypothetically speaking, let's say, I've got a system and every port in the video signal path has HDCP 2.2 except the AV receiver. So let's say in this scenario, the Blu-ray player is HDCP 2.2 compliant. The UHD TV is 2.2 compliant, but the AV receiver is not 2.2 compliant. So if I put in a 4K Blu-ray and push play, will I be totally stuck with a blank screen? Or will I still get an image, but it'll just be automatically adjusted down to a lower resolution?
The intent, from what I understand, and that's one of those things that is really going to be up to the Blu-ray manufacturer, how they choose to manage it. In other words, if we go back to the original HDCP, the intent was if you had HDC protected content, it went to a non-HDC protected device. It was supposed to put out a NTSC signal and everybody was going to be happy. What really happened, of course, is that it didn't put out any signal and we got a lot of snow. So the intent, again, by the HDCP, the Digital Content Organization, is that you would see 1080p signal from that Blu-ray, and you could watch high-definition images from it. But if they leave it to some of the manufacturers, they may not implement that particular output. That I have no idea how they're going to. What's really going to happen there? The intent, of course, is to do exactly what you suggested, that you'd watch 1080p. But that. Anything can happen at some point in the future. So
it sounds like a big gray area, which never happens with HDMI, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're bleeding edge technology. It's and there's costs involved in all these things. It doesn't come for free. Initially there was only one manufacturer that was making HDCP 2.2 compliant chipsets. There's a couple more now, but that means that there's some people that I can't buy maybe some of the lower cost chipsets that if I was designing a low end AVR, let's say. Right.
Yeah. So that actually, there was an article that I was reading a while back that was talking about HDCP 2.2, and I believe it sounds like this has since changed. I think this article was maybe back from 4 or 5 months ago. It was talking about the fact that at the time, there was only one chipset available for HDCP 2.2, and that it didn't support, the full color space, 444 color space. what you're saying now, has that changed? Are you able to implement a product with, the physical HDCP 2.2 compliant chipsets that can handle your full color space?
So the two don't necessarily get tied together. So, and by that I mean the limit for 444 is not the HDCP. The limit for 444 is how fast it will, what kind of data rate it will accept. By going to a 420 color space, I can do 60 hertz. Without significant changes in architecture to my chipset. And at this point, there are no at least that I'm familiar with, there's no 4K 60 444 chipsets available. So
gotcha.
It ties, and if you're going to design a new chipset, you're going to make it HDCP 2.2 compliant. So that may very well be true as far as the chipsets go, but that will change as the chips manufacturers start figuring out ways to deal with higher bandwidth. To get 4K 60 with 444, I need 18 gigabit per second bandwidth, which is incredibly fast.
Mm-hmm.
I could, where if I go 420, I'm still down in the 10.2 gigabit range, and so I can support that without significant changes to the architecture of my chip, and I can even transmit that over an HD-based-T extender.
Yeah,
444 has major issues going over HD-based-T.
Yeah, and so it's obviously very nuanced, and it's easy to come across stuff like that online that kind of leads you down one path of thinking that maybe the guy writing it with the best intentions, you could have misworded something or,
Sure.
maybe miscited something. And I think that's one of the things about HDMI in general that can frustrate people, is that there is a lot of misinformation and misconceptions floating around out there. So you've got to really be able to weed through it all and kind of make sense and understand what's relevant and what's not. Speaking of sort of terminology and maybe misconceptions, there's something that I've sort of wondered about, and I think I know the answer, but I kind of want to give you a chance to maybe clear it up for others who don't. When we talk about the HDMI 2.0 spec, and then we talk about HDCP 2.2, are those two interrelated in any way? Like, in other words, if something says it's certified for HDMI 2.0, my understanding is that doesn't necessarily mean anything about the HDCP, compliance of that particular device. Is that correct?
That's correct. And it actually goes a step beyond that. So good question. The HDMI LLC, which is the who we buy our licenses from to sell HDMI products, will not allow us to identify the feature sets of our products by an HDMI version number. So if you find somebody that says this is an HDMI 2.0 product, it's probably not a legitimate HDMI product. And the reason for that is that we're not required to utilize all the potential benefits of any HDMI specs. So, for example, back when we went to HDMI, I believe it was 1.4, maybe it was 1.3, but I think we went from 1.3 to 1.4. Part of the advance was the idea that you could run an Ethernet signal on your HDMI cable. Most of us didn't really care whether we could run an Ethernet signal on that cable, so many manufacturers chose not to increase the cost of their cables by including that functionality, right? And yet it was still 1.4 for anybody that didn't want to run Ethernet. It was a great cable. And so HDMI said, talk about your ability to run video, talk about your ability to run audio, talk about the distances, but don't talk about HDMI 1.4 because we're adding features that not everybody needs or wants. Let's talk about the features that you support. So HDCP 2.2, because actually HDMI 1.4a supports 4K 30. That's part of the HDMI 1.4 spec. And so HDCP 2.2 applies to that part of the HDMI 1.4 spec as well, because we're primarily seeing HDCP 2.2 on 4K content. So they don't necessarily come together.
Oh, that's very interesting. I hadn't considered that. Like, I know, I think, was it HDMI 1.3? Did you say was the first version to support 4K 30?
1.3 had the data rate to do it, but they didn't have a 4K standard. The 4K didn't come along until 1.4.
Okay, so it was 1.4. And I think the reasoning behind... So it seems... people are frustrated because they want the spec to be the spec and be consistent all throughout, but I think the frustration comes because I think HDMI is trying to word the specification and structure the specification in such a way that the data rates and the bandwidth, the limited bandwidth, can be divvied up to support whatever feature the manufacturer needs to support. Right? Is that what their intention was to try to do?
It's absolutely, and also there's features that not everybody needs. Let's say support for some obtuse color space. Well, if I'm doing a display, maybe I don't need to support that color space, but I need to support it in the HDMI spec because somebody that's doing a computer monitor needs that capability, right? And so as you start looking at all the different things that you can do with HDMI, not everybody needs everything.
Yeah, so it's a double-edged sword, that you get the flexibility in the specification from a manufacturing standpoint, but then from maybe an integrator's or end user standpoint, you're never quite sure about exactly what you're going to get. So I think that's kind of the double-edged sword.
It'd be great to have a simple, I can do 2.0. Well, yeah, but 2.0 is much bigger than what you probably really need. And the same thing's true with the HDMI 2.0 spec. Most people that are doing things that are compliant with 2.0 now are doing 4K 60 with 420 color space. But the spec, when it's fully implemented, will be do 444 color space.
Yep. That's what people are waiting for. Whether we'll be able to see the difference with our eyes, between 420 and 444, I guess remains to be seen. But we want to see the spec,
Well, and that actually brings up a great point, because if I'm watching video, so for the Resi guys out there, 420 is absolutely perfect. It's exactly what you need, because for typical visual content, your eye can't perceive really that much difference between 420 and 444. Now, if I move to our friends that are doing commercial work with a PC, it becomes readily obvious with certain color schemes what color space you're in. And so our commercial listeners will want to do 444, and it may be better for them to do 4K 30 444 than 4K 60 420. Whereas on the Resi side, if they have content that was originated at 60 hertz, it may be beneficial for them to do the 420. So it really can be a very content-dependent feature.
Yeah, and I know one of the things that, I'm concerned with now, recently, within the last 2 years, I've moved over to doing medical integration. And so when we're dealing with medical images, we often talk about, well, that's 4K, but it's not medical 4K. And what we mean by that is the color space isn't 444. Because if we're doing anything with an image that somebody's going to, a doctor, a surgeon, a nurse, anybody's going to be looking at, and there's medical data or information in there, we don't want to do anything to compress that or alter that image or the colors in any way. So that's definitely a concern for me. But yeah, I mean, if you're residential, 420, no problem, right? It's going to look great.
Well, and even in the commercial space. So let's say you're looking at a black and white X-ray. Mm-hmm. You can't see the difference.
Yeah.
Because the luminance is full resolution. Now, if you're looking at black detail against red blood, yeah, maybe you're going to see the resolution difference, right? it's very content specific as to, in that case, you probably don't have a lot of motion in what you're doing. And so 4K 30 might be a perfectly acceptable solution for what you're doing.
Yeah. Now, Jason, I think you wanted to touch on also backwards compatibility and between HDCP 2.2 and previous iterations of HDCP. Yeah. So I'll kick it over to you now and let you take that one away.
Yeah. So in the residential side of the business right now, it's, clients are very interested in 4K UHD. The TV manufacturers have really been, pushing it, and generally I think that's a good thing. But we're getting a lot of people asking, and is now a good time to buy a 4K TV? What I've come to notice, just following the technology as closely as I do, is that you don't always know. It's not always readily apparent if the TV that you're providing for your client is HDCP 2.2 compliant, which that could be a very big deal if I'm understanding it correctly. And this is what I want to ask you. If you have a TV, for instance, that has HDCP, I guess, anything earlier than 2.2, will it be, updatable via firmware? My understanding is no. This is a purely a hardware limitation. Is that correct?
That's what I understand too. Again, we don't make TV. So I can't. It's a little hard to speak for the TV manufacturer, but we're not seeing any way to fix that other than live with a lower resolution. But I think most of the current 4K TVs that are available now are fully HDCP 2.2 compliant, so that it should not be an issue with most of the televisions that are out there. But it also needs to apply to everything else in your system.
Right.
So, it can't, if your system is touching something that is not 2.2 compliant, it's going to say, sorry, dude, we're not going to give you anything, or we're going to give you HD. We are in the process. We're very close to shipping our 2.2 compliant matrix switchers. We're shipping extenders that are 2.2 compliant, so that will offer full compatibility. The bad news is for customers, and I really mean it that way, is that there's not a light at the end of the tunnel. If you have a 1.4 compliant system, there's no way it's going to work with 2.2 content. There's no way to upgrade it. You can't change it with firmware. The chipsets are not compliant. And it really goes back to what we were discussing at the beginning of the conversation. If I try to convert 2.2 compliant content to 1.4, all of a sudden that content becomes crackable by off-the-shelf components.
Mm-hmm.
And in the interest, and so if you unlock the door, you unlock the door. And now conceivably, we could do a scaler that took 2.2 compliant content, scaled it down to 1080p and sent it out. But I don't even know if that would be a legal device. That's a
it sounds like it sounds to me like with the way things are set up, that even if you could do that, you don't necessarily know if it's going to work. Like there's this sort of there's this sort of gray area with, okay, does HDCP 2.2 only apply to a 4K video feed, I guess you could call it.
Yep.
Like, will it scale down to HD and you'll still get picture, or are you just not going to get anything? And, based on my experience with HDMI, I'm afraid more often than not, you're probably going to get nothing, and you're going to get angry phone calls from your clients. And, it's just unfortunate. It's something to definitely be aware of. I think we're kind of running up against our time here, and I definitely want to give you a chance to touch on those new products. I think those were fairly recently released, a 6x6 and an 8x8 HD base T matrix that you guys put out. You want to touch on those a little bit?
Yeah, they're the first of our family of products that support 2.2. they're, like you say, there's 6x6 and 8x8. There's other products in the pipeline to fill out the rest of the product line. A couple things we did that's kind of interesting on them. We first of all, there are HD-based T outputs, and that supports the full HDCP 2.2 and 4K 60 420 color. We split the outputs, so some of the output ports are the 100 meter variety of HD-based T, and some of them are the 70 meter, because not all rooms in a home are the same distance, and there's some significant cost savings to use the 70 meter chipset if that works for a particular room. We also put a couple HDMI outputs on them, so they really are more like a 6x8 and an 8x10, and you can take those two HDMI outputs and run them to an AVR or run them to a projector that happens to be nearby for home theater, and lots of flexibility there. On the other outputs, we have variable analog audio outputs, so you can run those straight into an amplifier. It's got 5-band EQ, it's got volume control, it's got mute, so you've got a lot of things you can do with your audio in those remote zones as well. Exciting products, and the full complement of the line is going to be introduced at Infocom, and I think people will be real excited to get access to those products. The 6x6 and 8x8 will be shipping in about a month, and we're looking forward to a great reception for those products.
Oh, great! Yeah, that was going to be my next question. I saw on the website it said coming soon, so it sounds like those will. Yeah, will be shipping out here fairly quickly. People can get their hands on them, and it sounds like a lot of useful features. And of course, integrators can sleep easy at night knowing they're HDCP 2.2 compliant, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and 4K 60 too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, great. I'm looking at the website right now. I got the 5-input HDMI switcher up here, the AT-UHD SW52ED. And I'm just browsing through here, and I see EDID management, which I like, and then I also see HDCP management, which kind of piqued my interest here. So, can you touch on how your products can help manage this HDCP? What are we getting at here with HDCP management exactly?
Oh, sure. Well, the challenge is primarily on the commercial side that's designed to resolve. A lot of times, commercial users want to take the output of that switcher and run it to a codec for teleconferencing, or for streaming video, or some sort of recording mechanism to record presentations. And you can't do that with HDCP content. Now, and you say, okay, well, that's not a big deal. But what happens specifically with an Apple PC, and I understand also some Windows PCs, is that they throw the HDCP content protection on all content, whether it's a PowerPoint or a Word document or Excel document that goes into that switcher, if the switcher itself is HDCP compliant. So what we do is, we're HDCP compliant, but we have to tell that PC that we're not HDCP compliant, so that the PowerPoint can actually be transmitted through the switcher to the codec.
Oh, geez.
And so it's and people, the first time you explain that, people look at you and say, Apple wouldn't do that to me, would they? And yeah, they did.
They're trying to protect themselves, right?
Exactly. And it's as long as you understand what's going on, it's pretty easy to manage. We can say we're HDCP compliant or non-compliant through a RS-232 or a TCP/IP code, and you can actually switch it back and forth. And so, like on that particular switcher, it's got two outputs. One might be to a codec, one might be to the projector. So if you want to show a Blu-ray from your through the system, you have to report be compliant. You can put that on the switcher, but it won't transmit it out to the codec. If you switch to the codec function, you have to report as non-compliant, so the Apple PC will output the PowerPoint. And so that's a great opportunity for the control geniuses to work their magic and keep everything copacetic.
And that's why Jason and I have jobs.
That's it. You got it.
That particular product is not 2.2 compliant. It's 1.4 compliant, but it is 4K 60. So there's some things that can be done with it in terms of line doubled Blu-ray and some other 4K PC sources that are very cool, but it won't support the 2.2 functions.
Very good. So lots to take in, tons of information there. I really enjoyed the conversation, and again, appreciate you taking the time to come on. If there's anybody listening who wants to learn a little bit more, maybe connect with you, ask a follow-up question or two, what would be the best way for them to do that?
bill.s@atlona.com.
Very good. Well, again, thank you for taking the time to come on to AV Shop Talk with us this evening, and we enjoyed the conversation. We will let you go. Thanks, Bill.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, that concludes this episode of AV Shop Talk. Just wanted to extend another big thank you to Bill for taking the time out of his schedule to join us and talk shop a little bit. And if you're listening to this episode and you want more AV Shop Talk, head on over to the website, avshoptalk.com, where you can see a list of all our episodes and guests and interviews and topics covered thus far. We are a monthly podcast, and in addition to working, full-time in the industry, Jason and I love to chat with folks from all corners of the industry. And if you're listening to this and you think you'd like to, chime in or be part of the show, you can head over to avshoptalk.com/speakpipe and actually leave us a short voicemail to give some of your feedback. So we'd love to hear from you. Again, we're also on Twitter at AV Shop Talk. Thank you for listening to this episode. We will talk shop with you in the next episode of AV Shop Talk. Shop Talk podcast is produced independently by Jason Griffin and myself, Nate Schneider. Musical contributions have been provided by Colin Owens. Voiceover contributions have been provided by John Perry. For more information, visit avshoptalk.com/episode 16.